Greetings, Internet. It's me, the amazing Flec, here again on the treadmill during another 16-hour shift at work. Thanks for tuning in. Drink your water, folks. So I woke up this morning and I had a cup of coffee on the Paisley couch with a carrot. If vegetables are the hardest food group to get for most people, then it might be a good plan to try to get one of those first thing in the morning. I ended up just making some toast. And because I didn't get too much sleep, and a really quick fix in the morning just to curb the hunger in my stomach, I asked Lucy if she wanted to share any breakfast with me, and she just kind of looked at me indifferently. So it's been a more or less busy day at work here today. I managed to get a little bit of a break earlier and had a nice rest to catch up on the lack of sleep I had from the previous night of trying to make up for my problems with editing previous videos. But here we are now, back on the treadmill, getting some good exercise and feeling good. Last time I was on the treadmill in this room, I was talking about E prime and the inherent problems in human perception. What we see, we think is reality, but it's just an interpretation. It's easy to forget that. Now, it's not to say that there's no such thing as objective truth or objective reality, which is a whole other subject to debate altogether. I mean, if you ask me personally, I don't know if there is one objective reality or if it's multiple realities or anything like that, because all I know is what comes into my nervous system and how I choose to interpret it. That's all I'm allowed to know. I can't know anything more than that. And I just know such a small fraction of what's out there. In space, as well as in time, I inhibit such a small, minuscule, itsy-witsy bit of what reality really is. And then on top of that, my senses can only pick up on such a small fraction of what signals are coming into my body and into my nervous system. It's such a minuscule amount of information that I'm actually able to apprehend out of everything that comes to me. And then I call whatever interpretations of that information reality. Now, people can say what they want about science, and they can say what they want about religion as far as explaining these things go. But one thing I like that science has offered us is the ability to utilize the on and off switch, the circuit board, and give us computers, programming languages. The internet is kind of like a global brain. All these computers are different neurons firing off and communicating to each other. It's kind of an interesting way to look at it, I think. But science and technology has brought us to where we are today, for better or for worse. An American musician, you call him folk, you can call him blues, you can call him whatever you'd like to call him. But Tom Waits is an absolute legend. And I believe, I might be paraphrasing, so forgive me out there any Tom Waits fans. He said, humans are no more than monkeys with money and guns, or something very close to that. But I think he's onto something with that. We like to think that we're so much more, or so much more special than our animal companions here on the planet, when we're all made of the exact same star stuff that made everything else on this planet. It gets me to start wondering about what's considered natural and unnatural. I know I joked around about, being stuck in 90-degree angles and to go outside in my writer's block video and how that is unnatural about being inside buildings all the time. But just because something's man-made, does it make it unnatural? If I think about it for a little bit, I don't think necessarily. It doesn't have to be natural or unnatural. If it came from people came from nature. Just because it's coming from human nature doesn't mean it's not coming from Mother Nature or anything else like that. So I guess on that note, you can say something is as natural as the atomic bomb. I mean, it came from nature. It's a function of nature. It's a function of reality. Anyway, these are the kind of things I think about. But back to the inherent flaws in human perception. I've encountered a number of different people that seem to think that they have some sort of extrasensory perception, or they are unable to be fooled because they have some sort of divine guidance, or they have some sort of insight into the nature of reality that they can't be wrong about their interpretation. That's a very, very dangerous place to be, I assure you. Once you think you have everything figured out and that you have all the answers, you get stuck in this place where every time you find yourself to be wrong, there's something that happens called cognitive dissonance, which is where your brain gets conflicting ideas on what's real and what's not real. And it can result in you behaving in some strange ways. It's unfortunate because I've seen some people that I admire and respect and I've grown up with, and family members and friends, and who have experienced this sort of cognitive dissonance in a number of different ways. And I'm not saying I have never fallen victim to cognitive dissonance, and I'm probably a victim of cognitive dissonance to some degree, more than likely a victim of cognitive dissonance of some sort that I'm just not aware of. Which leads me to another interesting point. You don't know what you don't know. I'll say it again. You don't know what you don't know. It sounds redundant, and it probably is, but it makes a lot of sense if you think about it for a little while. I suppose that the only solution to that issue is to admit that you know that you don't know, and you accept that you don't know. I mean, you can believe in something that seems to be true most of the time, and it's not true some of the time. I don't know what I'm getting at with all of this. Perhaps I should just stick with my juggling and comedy antics, huh? And when I say something seems to be true most of the time or part of the time, I mean that in consideration of Aristotelian logic of things that are either yes or no, on or off, or black or white, or other forms of dichotomous thinking or classification of things. Our brain seems to like to put things into a category of this or that, or 1, 2, or 3, or in these little compartments, instead of realizing that things change over time, and that they might flux between one thing and another. I think it might come down to a fear of change, maybe, or a discomfort of change. I think people like the idea of repetition, of repeating things, of the cycles and the rhythms and the patterns and the habits that we all experience throughout our lives. We have the days of the week, we have the months of the year, we have sunrise, midday, sunset, we have our holidays we do every year, we celebrate birthdays, we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we have books that we like to read again and again and again, if you're like me. But there's something to that joy that we get from repetition and doing things over and over again, almost as if reliving it, hoping to get back to that time that you felt that way about it when you first discovered that thing that you're repeating over and over again. And then after time draws by, that dopamine just decreases as you go along, unfortunately. And that's too bad. But looking on the bright side, it's all the more reason to open your mind up to new things and try out new things, break old habits that are not so good, and pick up some new ones that are better for you. Well, here I am, some guy on YouTube rambling again about consciousness and perception and stuff and the cosmos and things like that. Oh, and speaking of the cosmos, I have a fun shirt on I'd like to share with you today. I got it from my little brother, I think, for my birthday a couple years back. I've been a fan of a certain cartoon for a while, and one of my favorite characters of all time is also featured on the shirt. There he is. Whoop. I sped up the treadmill. What you see there is Jake the dog, one of the most wholesome characters. Wow, that's very fast. 1 second. I'm okay. We have Jake the dog, Finn the human, riding an adorable cat in outer space. 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 If you're watching this stuff, thanks very much for the awesome shirt. So yeah, the universe is a huge place. It's confusing. There's lots of unanswered questions. So a bunch of people want to have answers to pacify that part of their brain that's curious about what's going on in this world. And we don't know. Some of us think that we know. I think it's good to know that you don't know and separate that from your hopes and your dreams. Maybe your faith about, I don't want to pull you away from your belief system by any means. Although it's never a bad idea to question your belief systems. My opinion, but if you found something that works for you, stick with it. Happiness. Be happy, be good, be wholesome. I think that's probably better than listening to some guy ramble about reality on the internet while walking on a treadmill talking about his shirt with cartoon characters and a cat in outer space. A lot of my thoughts about how we interpret reality has been coming up lately due to all the things happening in the world these days. I don't want to talk too much about that because we get more than enough of a dose of what's happening in our world today from all of the outlets, not only in the mainstream media but also from people on our social medias. And it's just exhausting. It's It's a lot to handle, it's a lot to process. And for the most part, a lot of people know where they already stand, and they're steadfast in that assessment of what they think is going on and what they think is a conspiracy, or what they think isn't really happening, or so on and so on. But in consideration of all that, I suppose I can leave you tonight with this little thought. I admire a seeker of truth, but I'm apprehensive about one who claims to have found the truth. Something to think about. Well, anyways, I've talked your ear off long enough, folks. I appreciate you very much for sticking around and watching this video to the end. I know that I can be a bit much and all over the place with what I have to say. But it's good therapy for me, and I appreciate that anyone out there has any interest in hearing what I have to say. So thank you so very much for tuning in and watching my channel here today. Oh yeah, and you can always subscribe if you want to. I mean, I'd like it if you did. Alright, well, that's it for Treadmill Truths. Remember, every Sunday I will be releasing a video on circus and flow arts, instructional videos on how to get started on the very basics in juggling, tightrope walking, slack rope walking, staff manipulation, some poi, very basic stuff, just for beginners. The best way to know about which ones are coming up and which ones happen is to subscribe. So to all the viewers out there, remember to keep safe, be well, stay humble, and peace.